time for your last segment on MMA Lockup. Guys, make sure you go like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, both of those at MMA Lockup. I'm joined by Chris down in Central Arkansas. Chris, how you doing, man?
Living a little bit local, bro.
Are you beaming this week because we have two UFC events in 1 week? We haven't had that in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. The UFC, loading us up. The Wednesday card, we'll get into a little bit of that. But, topping it off on the weekend, going into the Labor Day weekend, UFC 164, Ben Henderson, the Anthony Showtime Pettis, to the most electrifying fighter in the sport, going to take us into our Labor Day weekend. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, man. You know what? Let's go ahead and get right into that main event and the co-main event. The co-main event, Anthony was really high on Frank Mir, saying that he was going to defeat Josh Barnett at Josh Barnett's re-debut in the UFC. Do you kind of agree with that? How do you see this fight going for these guys? It's a very important fight for both guys.
Well, Josh Barnett, the shoot boxer, former UFC heavyweight champion, was the favorite going into the Strikeforce World Heavyweight Grand Prix. He brings a nasty, nasty game. He's going to try and take Frank Mir down to the ground, something most heavyweights do not want to do, but he's so good at getting opponents down, getting top mount position. It's just going to be interesting to see if he's able to do so, and if that is the case, Josh Barnett, he'll punish you or he'll try and tap you out. It's going to be a great fight. This is a fight. It should do the distance. I don't see it going the distance, though, and I think I've got to say it favors the babyface assassin.
Yeah, and that was one thing that Anthony and I were talking about in the segment before. Anthony had Frank Mir. He was basically saying the fight could go anywhere, and Frank's pretty much set to take that fight. And I have to agree, if it goes to the ground, that Frank Mir is so lethal on the ground, man. He'll let you know that he wants the fight to be on the ground. I mean, he broke Big Nog's arm. He's dispatched many a heavyweight on the ground. I think that Barnett's best chance is to keep it standing, but, I know I said Frank Mir's stand-up isn't that great. I mean, Barnett's is all right, but I don't think he's not a boxer. Let me put it that way. He's not somebody that I expect to be on their feet, but I think if he keeps Frank Mir on his feet, I think that they can both go the distance. It's either going to be very boring or very exciting.
Well, here's the thing about Josh Barnett. You got a guy that's a big 6'4". He's a big, big man. What he's so good at doing is getting on top of opponents and distributing his weight. So you're not talking about an Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, who's a 230-pounder. You're talking about a guy that's going to be about 270 and pretty much 6'5" on Frank Mir if he's able to take him to the ground. So that brings a whole world of problems that Frank Mir's not used to. A bigger man with great submission skills and a nasty ground game. So, I guess the question is, has Frank Mir ever fought an opponent like that with nasty submission skills, the size that Josh Barnett has to go along with the experience that he has? You're talking about a guy that's been in the game for a long time.
Yeah, definitely, and that's one of the reasons I got to take Josh Barnett, man. You're right. He is very good at distributing his weight and laying it on you in a position that you can't get out of. I'm kind of glad that we agree there on Josh Barnett. We think that the fight's going to go different ways, but the fact that you and I agree on who's going to win has got to be a sign, right?
Yeah, it typically doesn't happen. More times than not, we do differ, but you bring some valid points, I bring some valid points. Frank Mir, I think, has, a suspect chin. We've seen it happen. He's a tough individual, but, he does have a suspect chin. Whenever Frank Mir gets popped in the face a few times, he tries to take it to the ground because more times than not he has the advantage there, but does a stunned Frank Mir have the advantage over Josh Barnett on the ground?
That's a very good question. We've got about 45 seconds. Yeah, we might go another minute and 45. We got to talk about this main event here. Benson Henderson versus Anthony Pettis 2. We finally get to see the rematch for these two guys. I've been calling for this fight since the end of the WEC when it got dissolved into the UFC. This fight has all the implications of being fight of the night.
Well, this fight's like Auburn, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan. This is a rivalry right here, okay? Take away the fact that they fought already once. You got two styles right here that really kind of conflict. It's going to be interesting to see, Ben Henderson, how he tries to revenge that loss. He's so much more improved since the last time those two fought. And then you have Anthony Showtime Pettis, who came in as the top guy coming out of the WEC after defeating Benson Henderson. You have a guy that's out to get a revenge, and then you have a guy that's out to get respect. So, looking at this, I think this thing is going to go down to the wire. It is not going to go it's not going to be finished. It's going to go to the scorecards. I am going to take Ben Henderson in a decision. It's going to be a very, very close decision, but go ahead and expect a third fight.
Yeah, the thing with me is it's so hard to pick this fight just because these two guys have changed so much, especially Benson Henderson. Benson has gone above and beyond what he was in the WEC, and Pettis has too. Pettis only has that loss to Quake Guida to really kind of say that, he slipped a little bit when he came to the UFC. He lost that decision there, but, he's such a dynamic striker. I just feel like he's going to outstrike Benson, but Benson's he can take your game away from you, and that's going to be the big thing in this fight. Is he going to be able to take Anthony Pettis' dynamic, crazy, off-the-cage striking away from him? And if he can do that, Benson Henderson is going to coast to the win, but I don't think he can do that. I am going to take Anthony Pettis by decision in this fight. I think that Pettis wants that belt back. I think he got humbled when he didn't get that shot when he came to the UFC. I think he just wanted to fight after that, and I think he just wanted to prove to everybody that it's my belt and I deserve this title shot. And he made it back. It took him a little bit, but he made it back.
I will say this one last thing. The only way to defeat Anthony Showtime Pettis is to make it to where he can't be flying off fences and doing matrix moves, and he can't do that if he's on his back. Ben Henderson's taking his butt to the ground. This is going to be a dirty, dirty fight. Go ahead and expect it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a 5-round war, definitely. Chris, love to have you on the show this week. I know we're running a little short on time on your on the segment, but man, I think that was great analysis by both of us there.
Yeah, one last thing. Razorbacks 42, Louisiana 17, Woo Big Suey.
Boom! The first Razorback game is tomorrow, guys. That's gonna be Saturday. Then the first Razorback game against the Ragin' Cajuns. Chris is calling it 42. What was that?
17.
42-17. That's a viable score. I'm going to take the Razorbacks in that game. They're probably going to get, I'll go with that. I'll say 31-24. I'll give them a little bit just because they're going to take the starters out early.
I can't argue with that, man. We're gonna get us a W. Bernard, it's been a pleasure, my man. Make sure you get me back on the show again so we can tangle up and talk about UFC 164.
Of course, man. We'll be back on with Chris next week. You guys say hello to him on Facebook. Make sure you go like us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Both of those is at MMALockup. And that's all for us this week. Remember, if you're the last one here, remember, turn out the lights and lock it up.